Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Steam curled into the air as I stepped out of the shower, skin still warm and tingling from the rush of water. A soft towel was all that shielded me, clinging to damp skin as I reached for the mirror, fogged over with heat. My heart was steady, until I heard the door click. I turned, startled, and there he was. My husband stood leaning casually against the frame, his gaze fixed on me in a way that made the room feel smaller. The playfulness in his smirk was unmistakable, but beneath it lay something heavier, an intensity that sent a rush of warmth down my spine. He didn't speak at first. His silence was louder than words, and I could feel it, the weight of his eyes tracing every detail of me. My breath caught when he stepped forward, closing the distance with a confidence that made my knees weaken. "Comfortable?" he teased, his voice low, rich, and deliberate. His hand brushed against my arm, just enough to stir goosebumps, just enough to remind me how little space there was between us. My pulse raced, and I clutched the towel tighter, though a part of me wasn't sure if I wanted to. He leaned in close, his lips brushing the edge of my ear, not kissing, not yet, just close enough for me to feel the heat radiating from him. I couldn't move, couldn't look away, and when I finally dared to meet his eyes, the tension between us snapped into something undeniable. The towel shifted under his touch. My breath hitched. His smile deepened, and in that electric silence, I realized what he was about to do. And then, the bathroom door had closed behind him, but the echo of his touch lingered like a shadow on my skin. I stood frozen, towel pressed tight, though what I wanted was the very thing I pretended to resist. Moments like this were not new between us, they had always been part of our rhythm. Yet lately, I had noticed a shift. Our marriage wasn't fragile, but it wasn't untouched either. We loved each other deeply, but life had begun to carve small cracks into our bond. Work hours stretched long into the night. Conversations sometimes fell into routine, about bills, errands, schedules. There were days when I felt we were becoming business partners instead of lovers. And then, there were nights like this one, when all of that tension rose to the surface in ways neither of us could deny. I knew what haunted him. The fear that I might slip away emotionally, distracted by the noise of everyday life. And I knew what haunted me, that he might forget to see me not as a wife managing lists and duties, but as the woman who still burned for him. He stepped closer, brushing a stray strand of wet hair from my cheek, his thumb lingering against my skin. It was a small gesture, almost innocent, but it carried the weight of every unspoken word we had swallowed over the past months. My heart thudded against my ribs. "Do you even know how long I've been waiting for this moment?" he murmured, not demanding, not accusing, just vulnerable, as though peeling back a layer of himself. I wanted to answer, but my throat tightened. Because I had been waiting, too. Waiting for him to remind me of this intensity, waiting to feel chosen in a way that was raw and undeniable. My towel slipped slightly, and his hand instinctively caught it, his eyes locking with mine. A nervous laugh escaped me, breaking the silence, but the tremor in my voice betrayed how much I wanted him. The space between us filled with something sharper than desire. It was need, tangled with fear, love, and the ache of what had been left unsaid for too long. In that moment, the bathroom was no longer just a bathroom. It was a confessional. A battleground. A place where truths were threatening to spill out with every stolen breath. He leaned closer, forehead almost brushing mine, and whispered, "Don't pull away from me. Not tonight." And with those words, I felt the walls I had carefully built inside begin to tremble. The story had only just begun. The silence between us was thick, humming with something neither of us dared to name. His hand still rested against my cheek, steady but charged, while my towel clung precariously, threatening to betray the calm I was pretending to hold. I could feel his jealousy woven into the moment, though he hadn't said the words. It was there in the way his eyes searched mine, hungry yet wary, as if daring me to confirm his suspicions. He had seen the way others looked at me, at dinners, at gatherings, even in fleeting glances from strangers. He never said much, but I knew. His silence carried the weight of a storm held back. "I hate how they look at you," he whispered finally, his voice low and tight. "Like you belong to them. You don't. You're mine." The rawness in his tone startled me, stirring both guilt and desire. Because a part of me craved that possessiveness. A part of me wanted to be claimed, to feel that intensity after weeks of distance and routine. Yet another part of me rebelled against it, remembering nights when I felt unseen, when his phone stole his attention instead of me. I met his gaze, letting the tension speak for me. "And what if I want to be wanted?" I asked softly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. My heart raced, thundering in my chest, as if daring him to unravel the truth in my voice. His jaw tightened, his breath shallow, and the air between us sparked like flint to steel. The towel slipped further, the steam wrapping us in a cocoon that felt both safe and dangerous. Every nerve in my body screamed that we were standing at the edge of something we couldn't turn back from. The truth was, I longed for him just as fiercely as he feared losing me. That longing was forbidden only because we had buried it under the weight of daily life. But now, pressed so close, with jealousy and desire clawing at our walls, it was threatening to explode. And I didn't know whether to fight it, or fall into it. The walls of steam closed in around us, and the silence stretched taut, like the final moment before lightning cracks the sky. Neither of us moved away. Neither of us wanted to. The bathroom had become too small to contain the tension, every breath, every heartbeat pulling us closer into its gravity. He pressed a hand against the door beside my head, caging me in without touching more than he already had. His nearness was suffocating, intoxicating. I could smell the faint trace of his cologne mixed with the warm mist of the shower, could hear the uneven rhythm of his breathing against mine. "Why do you do this to me?" he whispered, voice rough, almost broken. His eyes flicked down briefly, tracing the outline of the towel that barely clung to my frame. "You make me lose control." My lips parted, but no words came out. My own control was slipping, my body betraying me with the way I leaned into his heat, with the way my hands trembled as if they wanted to reach for him and yet didn't dare. "We're alone," I finally managed, my voice shaking but steady enough to challenge him. "No one will know what happens here." Unless, I stopped myself, the unfinished thought hanging in the air like forbidden fruit. His gaze sharpened, catching the daring edge in my tone, and for a heartbeat I thought he would close the space between us completely. The towel slid a little more, my fingers clutching it in a feeble attempt at resistance. My pulse hammered against my skin, loud enough that it felt like he could hear it. He leaned in until his lips hovered just above mine, so close I could feel the warmth of every breath, the promise of something inevitable. His hand tightened on the doorframe, knuckles white, as though the last thread of restraint was keeping him from crossing a line we both knew he wanted to break. And then, he pulled back, just enough to make my knees weak from the sudden absence. His eyes burned into mine, darker, deeper than before. "This isn't over," he said quietly, with the certainty of a vow. And in that suspended second, I realized he was right. It was only the beginning. The moment between us had stretched so tightly it felt like one breath, one glance, would snap it. His hands still braced against the door, his body so close the heat of him seeped through the thin towel clinging to my skin. Every inch of me screamed for him to close the gap. But just when I thought he would, he froze. His eyes flicked toward the counter, toward my phone, glowing faintly with a notification. A single message, brief and sharp, lit up the fogged screen. "Last night meant everything. I can't stop thinking about you." Time stopped. I felt my stomach twist, my breath catch in my throat. He saw it before I could move, before I could even think. The raw intensity in his eyes shifted from desire to something sharper, wounded, dangerous, burning with questions he didn't need to ask. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might shatter the walls. "It's not," I began, but my voice cracked. His hand dropped from the door, trembling with the effort of holding back everything he wanted to say. "Who?" His whisper was barely audible, but it carried the weight of thunder. The air between us wasn't just hot anymore, it was suffocating. Guilt, longing, fear, all tangled together, pressing against me harder than his body ever had. I swallowed, tears stinging at the corners of my eyes, but desire still burned beneath it all. Because the truth was, the message wasn't what it seemed. It wasn't another man, not in the way he thought. It was an old friend, someone I had confided in, someone I'd let see parts of me I'd hidden from him. Emotional intimacy, not physical, but in some ways, more dangerous. I needed to feel wanted, I admitted, voice breaking. You were here, but not here. And I was lonely. The silence that followed was unbearable. His jaw clenched, his chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, his eyes glistening with hurt. But beneath the pain, there was still hunger. Still love. Still that desperate pull between us that neither betrayal nor doubt could erase. Without warning, he stepped forward again, gripping the towel at my waist, his voice low, almost feral. If you needed reminding, I'll remind you who you belong to. The towel slipped, the heat between us spiked, and just as the moment was about to shatter every barrier left, the sound of the phone buzzed again, louder this time, vibrating against the counter. Both of us froze, our bodies pressed together, our breaths tangled. Another message. Another secret threatening to explode. And the climax had only begun. The phone's buzz cut through the air like a blade, shattering the fragile silence. I felt his grip tighten at my waist, his knuckles pale, his breath unsteady. His eyes, still locked on mine, were storm clouds waiting to break. Answer it, he said at last, his voice trembling between command and plea. I hesitated, towel slipping lower, my hands frozen. My chest rose and fell too quickly, torn between fear and longing. If I do, it'll hurt you more. His jaw clenched, pain flashing across his face. It already has. The words landed heavier than the steam in the room. I forced myself to move, reaching for the phone, my fingers shaking. Another message flashed before I could unlock it. You can't ignore me forever. His face darkened. He stepped back, not in defeat but in a raw attempt to contain himself. So it is someone, he spat, his voice breaking at the edges. Tears blurred my vision. Not the way you think. I needed someone to listen. Someone who saw me when you didn't. My throat tightened. I never crossed that line. But maybe I wanted to. The confession cracked something in him. He slammed his palm against the doorframe, the sound echoing like thunder. His chest heaved, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. But then, softer, weaker, why didn't you tell me you felt that way? The vulnerability in his voice undid me. I stepped forward, towel barely holding, and placed a trembling hand on his chest. His heart pounded hard beneath my palm, matching the frantic rhythm of my own. Because I was afraid you wouldn't care anymore, I whispered. Afraid I'd already lost you. For a long, excruciating moment, he just stared at me, caught between rage, grief, and love. Then, slowly, his hand came up to cover mine, pressing it harder against his chest. You haven't lost me, he said finally, voice raw. But if you want me, you fight for me. No more secrets. No more halfway. The tears spilled freely now. My body shook as relief and passion collided, breaking me open. Then show me, I breathed. And in that instant, the storm shifted. His lips crashed against mine, fierce, desperate, full of both punishment and forgiveness. His hands claimed me as if reminding me of every moment we'd buried beneath silence. I clung to him, to the fire and the pain, to the promise that even broken love could burn hotter than betrayal. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Healing would take more than one night. Still, this was the beginning of something new. A second chance forged in fire. The story had found its resolution, yet left the door open for more. The end, or perhaps the start of another chapter. The storm had passed, but its echoes still lingered in the steamy air around us. His arms were still wrapped tightly around me, holding me as though he feared I might slip away if he let go. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the frantic rhythm of his heartbeat begin to calm. It was the sound of a man who had almost lost everything, and who had chosen, in that moment, not to let it go. I pulled back slightly, enough to see his face. His eyes, once blazing with jealousy and hurt, were softer now, the raw edges smoothed by something deeper, love that had survived the storm. I reached up, brushing my thumb across his cheek, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't flinch away. He leaned into my touch. "I don't want anyone else," I whispered. "I never did. I only wanted you to see me again." His breath caught, and he closed his eyes, forehead resting against mine. "I see you now," he murmured. "And I swear, I won't forget again." The sincerity in his voice melted the last of my defenses. The towel, the phone, the shadows of doubt, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was us, standing raw and vulnerable, but choosing each other all over again. He kissed me then, not desperate, not punishing, but tender. A kiss that spoke of forgiveness and promise, of love that had been tested but not broken. My tears mixed with the warmth of his lips, and I let myself sink into the safety of it. For the first time in a long time, I felt not just wanted, but cherished. We stood like that for what felt like forever, the steam curling around us like a cocoon, sealing us in a private world where nothing else existed. When he finally pulled back, he smiled, soft, genuine, the smile I had fallen in love with. "Let's start over," he said, his hand tightening around mine. I nodded, my heart lighter than it had been in months. Together. And in that moment, standing barefoot on cool tiles with nothing but a towel and his arms to hold me, I knew we had found our way back, not to what we were, but to something stronger. A love reborn from the fire, ready to burn brighter than ever. The story ended not with betrayal, but with renewal. Not with loss, but with the simple, enduring truth: love, when fought for, could survive anything.